Hey everybody, welcome back to the gym. My name's Kurt and this is the Kurt Locker. Today I'm reviewing the Bells of Steel SS4 safety squat bar. Before we get to the video, real quick, I wanted to take a note. Go check out UXO Supplements. I've got some Aqua Spike in my cup, something I always have with me. I just can't stand like drinking tons and tons of just water, so I add some Aqua Spike. It has a lot of those essential like salts, tastes good, strawberry flavored. Replace the salts that you're doing right now. Use the link down below. Saves you 15%. I get a small cut. Doesn't affect your price other than just reducing it. With that, let's roll straight into the video. Now, my intent with this video is to do two things. One, I'm going to compare this to my use of the SS3, the predecessor to the SS4, and I would also like to take a little bit of credit because my channel is definitely one of the ones that detonated the SS3 when it was first released. The SS4 is also something I'm looking to break down and give you guys a review of because it's what we do. It's what we do on this channel. It's why you keep tuning in. Now to summarize, the reasons that the SS3 did not fare well in my review was for a couple things. One, it claimed needle bearings inside of the plate loading sleeves, and they definitely had no needle bearings in there. The pad was the pad was okay. But basically the angles were a little bit off, nothing was really there. They claimed a 1500 load capacity on something that was like really small, so it was impossible to actually load to 1500 pounds. But basically the big thing was the rust that was underneath the pad and in the detachable handles, as well as the use of literally steel on steel inside the sleeves. Absolutely atrocious. It was the worst sleeve breakdown I've ever done, and the SS4 redeems themselves and they take it up a couple notches from some of my lesser important arguments, such as now it fits inside of a 49-inch rack. But before we get to all that, first, what is a safety squat bar? It is a bar that's designed for people that either have wrist mobility issues or they just want an accessory bar. Usually the first additional bar, the first specialty bar that you buy is either going to be a trap bar or a safety squat bar. Bells of Steel needs to compete in that space, so they released the SS4. But if you have a lot of strain on your shoulders when you're squatting, or if you have wrist issues, or if you just want to do different types of lower body training using a better barbell, this is a really good direction to go just in general. Whether you do Bells of Steel, Rep, Titan, Rogue, Kabuki, are they dead? No one knows. So first, let's just cover the Bells of Steel SS4. The Bells of Steel SS4 comes in at $319.99, so we're gonna say 320 bucks. Bells of Steel does not charge shipping, at least not in the US, so that includes your shipping cost, which is a pretty awesome deal. By the way, if you decide that this review helps you, use my link in the description below. I do get a very small cut of that sale, but nobody really uses those links anyways, so use it or don't use it. Here we are. Now the total length on this is 86.6 inches, and that's from sleeve to sleeve. Safety squat bars in general tend to be a little bit longer than most other barbells that are out on the market, and that's due to the camber that's built into the shaft as it approaches where the sleeve is. The diameter of the bar is 1.26 inches. From what I can tell, it is solid bar stock, which means that it's not necessarily stiff. That's actually kind of a misconception when it comes to bar stock. The solid stuff is not actually always stiffer. Sometimes having a hollow tube is actually a little bit stiffer. The loadable sleeve length is 11 3/4 inches long, which is still pretty low, but I gotta say that it works, especially if you use things like weighted out plates or steel plates. The reason I say weighted outs is because weighted out plates, which are nice and thin, I've got 2 sets down there and I'm going to be expanding my gym soon with them, is they're just so thin that you're able to actually load. And I did the math earlier, and you can definitely get the claimed weight capacity on this thing if you use the weighted outs. But even if you don't use the steel ones, the bumper plates fit on there and you can get a significant load on there. But a quick note on that is that because it's only 11 3/4 inches long, you're going to run into issues if you're using things like high temps or HG 2.0s or any of those like basic urethane bumper plates, not urethane, but like the other bumper plates, just the rubber ones, especially the crumb rubber ones. You're gonna very quickly run out of sleeve space on this. So if that's you, maybe a different barbell is the right answer. Now, when it comes to safety squat bars, there's not too much you can really do. It has about a 25-degree camber that's measured by me using my eyeballs. I don't have an exact way to get that. That'll come into play a little bit later when we talk about how it stacks up to other bars. But one of the big ways that Bells of Steel has made this stack up to other bars is by marketing other handles that can be used with this barbell. So basically we have a seal row bar, then we have the spider bar, which is knurled on the end. I'm gonna put those back up in here. And then we have the chain of death. Here's what I gotta say about these is it also comes with the standard handles. And this is what I'm gonna say about the different handle options. I think that for most people, the handle options don't matter. The standard handles that come with it at that $320 price tag are gonna be more than what everybody else needs to actually use this barbell effectively. When it comes to swapping out handles to different type of handles, there's a couple things to keep in mind. Is this is a directionalized handle. So when you screw it in, you can't just screw it in tight. It has this adjuster nut on the very end, and this adjuster nut is meant to be adjusted so that when you actually screw this into place, you want it to end where the handles are pointing where the hands need them. So what you can see is right now they're turned out, which honestly for a spider bar, that's not the end of the world. A turned out handle is something that you can do in order to get your hands a little bit more kind of out of the way. But that also means that when you do this side, you need it to end in the exact position going the other direction. And that's where the little adjuster nut comes in handy. And this is also my first point of feedback for the Bells of Steel team. The problem with their design here is that it's a single nut that's on this screw. So what'll happen is you'll get it adjusted perfectly that one time. And something to keep in mind is that this handle, the nut, is all the way up here in the foam. So unless you're willing to like take this off to line it up, it's really kind of a pain in the butt, especially since as you get it up there and you start adjusting it and twisting it in, this will tend to catch the foam padding that's inside. And as a result, it'll kind of turn as it goes. And so it just makes it to where these two handles in particular are a little bit of a pain in the butt to get set up. If Bells of Steel wanted to fix this, a really simple thing they could do is instead of a single nut there, get one that's about half of this width and put two of them so that you could lock them together. That would make it to where you could get it adjusted, get it good, exactly where it needs to be the one time, and then basically turn the second nut on itself and it would lock itself into position. So that is the spider handle and the seal row handle. I'll say that they're solid handles. They work well. The spider row handle is knurled right at the end. It's the same knurl that's on their standard handles. It's nice and smooth throughout. I do have a small blemish here with the finish. This black chromium looks really good, but the handle specifically has some blemishes on it. The rest of the bar, even with the pad off, has no blemishes, no issues, no concerns. Now the second thing that's kind of a pain in the butt is trying to get the chain handle on. Now remember, my favorite handle with this is the standard handle. I have zero issues with the standard handle. I think the standard handle is good to go. I think that for almost everybody out there, it's going to be the handle that you want. But if you're interested in the chain handle, you can definitely get it. What it'll do is it'll actually kind of attach your hands, but you won't be able to push up as you come out of the squat. If you watch people use a safety squat bar, a lot of times they'll kind of push on the handles as they ascend out of the squat. When you have the chain handles, as you do that, it just kind of moves the handle straight up and down, not allowing you to do it. The problem is that when you're installing it, it's basically a bolt welded to a chain, welded to a handle. Remember earlier how I said that that's all the way up in there? This is where it's touching. So even just getting it started is a pain. Now for this first little bit, you can grab the first link and twist it in there, but very quickly you end up in a position where you wish there was maybe just a longer nut that it came with, because now I'm having to grab the second link and twist the first link that's connected to the bolt. So there's a little bit of play in it, and as you continue twisting it, it'll eventually seat all the way. I suppose that you don't necessarily have to seat it all the way, but it's just something that I prefer to do. And there you have it, the chain is installed. Uninstalling it's a little easier because you can kind of just grab it at the end, and if you pull really hard, it'll keep that chain nice and tight. And there you go. So I do got to say, as I install the normal handle again, the normal handle is my favorite. My second favorite is the chain handle. And what I'll say is if seal rows or a chest isolated row is something that you do, the seal row handle is really good. I need Bells of Steel to come and I need them to fix the adjustment mechanism inside the handle, because right now it's just too much of a pain in the butt. Because what I find is that every single time I take that handle off, that stopper nut moves. And every single time that stopper nut moves, I end up in a position where I have to like redo it with every single time I do it. And it's really crappy when you go to pull on a seal row and that handle isn't tight. You want that handle to be tight because the point of the exercise is not to stabilize the handle. The point of the exercise is to engage and do a row. So again, this is where Bells of Steel has really worked hard to set themselves apart. I think overall, you know, it's a cool concept. It's a really good job. Essentially, there's 5 different options for each bar. Essentially, you have the standard, the spider, the chain, and the seal. And then, of course, you could always just take the handle off for movements like JM presses if you want to really blast your triceps. Now, another area that Bells of Steel has set themselves apart is actually with the sleeves. Now, these are very well machined. They're just nice Olympic sleeves, basically 2-inch Olympic bars, a 50 millimeter hole in the middle. It's going to use those types of collars, those types of weights. That's what we've come to expect with basically all gym equipment. Gone are the days of pig iron and the 1-inch holes. I'm sure that there are some people that love them, like CT Fletcher, and nothing against them. I just don't see a big practical point to them in most people's gyms because the 2-inch hole is basically the standard. Now to demonstrate this, I have the Lockjaw Pros. Lockjaw Pros. And basically these things go on there super nicely. They hold on nice and tight with 0 issues because it's made for those standard plates. I also have the AbMat Rulocks, which these are probably the most efficient collar as far as getting them on and off, but they don't necessarily work with every single bar out there. But the rib sleeves definitely catch that rubber nicely and keep the Rulocks nicely engaged. Both collars working well. This is an advantage over like the Elite FTS SS yoke bar because it uses 1.9 OD, so you got to have the special axle collars, which for someone like me that's a strongman, I have those collars laying around, but if you don't have those collars laying around, obviously that's going to be a limiting factor for you. Some other just kind of nice things, like I mentioned earlier, in the SS3, what I found was that when the bar was in the rack, it would essentially push your J-cups in towards each other because where the 3-inch camber comes down was actually closer than 49 inches, which is the distance from the outside to the outside on any 3x3, so like from Rogue, or this one's from Surplus Strength. Now Rep Fitness and Sorinex, theirs are a little bit more narrow. So again, no issues with this bar, but they did move it out just a little bit. They also have a oversized pad. The oversized pad is made out of basically the exact same material that's inside of the SS yoke bar and almost every other safety squat bar out there. It's held up well to my abuse. Now, something to keep in mind is that this is actually the demo bar from Home Gym Con. So a whole bunch of people squat on this before I even got it in the gym. And I gotta say, it held up just fine. It holds up fine to the abuse in my garage. I am definitely not in a climate controlled space. So it's gone through cold, it's gone through hot, it's gone through sawdust being all over it and being blown off with a leaf blower to being wiped with Windex and sprayed with God knows what. But basically it's held up really well. And that also is something I gotta say for the black chromium finish, with an exception for some of the accessory handles, which have some blemishes to them, but the rest of it looks really good. And I gotta comment that I really do like that black chromium finish. I went on a little bit of a rabbit trail at one point looking at black chromium. I just like the way it looks. It's like sparkly and black and pretty, and I dig it. All right, so now for some comparisons. Let's compare it to the Rep SSB. It has fully knurled and removable handles just like the SS4, high quality padding just like the SS4, but it has a 22-degree camber instead of about a 25-degree camber for this. Essentially what that means is it's gonna maybe, and I say that very loosely, maybe hit the quads a little bit more, but in all reality, it's basically the exact same thing. And again, they're great for versatile lifts. You can do all the same lifts that you can do with a rep bar, that you can do with the Bells of Steel bar, that you can do with the Titan bar, Elite FTS, Kabuki, Rogue, all of them. They all do the same lifts. It's just a matter of where do you want to spend your money. The con is that with that $349 price tag, that it's just a little bit more expensive. But what I will say is that Rep has done a really good job setting themselves apart both in the benches and the bars world, and it seems like they really are focused on staying around and being competitive for the home gym scene in the future. So you definitely have that longevity, and that is not a knock on Bells of Steel at all. It's just something that Rep has done at an accelerated pace compared to Bells of Steel. Now let's compare that to the Titan Fitness Safety Squat Bar, which comes in at $299, which is a little bit less than the SS4. It has a slightly larger drop than this one. This one has about a 3.5, somewhere right around there. The Rep is also right around there. The Titan one is a 5-inch, which is a little bit more. It's got that same heavy duty foam. It's same weight capacity, 1,500 pounds. It's budget friendly, sturdy, comfortable. It's just it's a good bar. I will say that I reviewed that bar ages ago, and I'll try to link that up here somewhere where you can link and go find that video as well. I liked that bar. I don't currently own it anymore, but I liked it. But it was one that doesn't fit well in a 49-inch rack going all the way across. It does tend to come up a little bit. I can't say whether or not for Rep that's a thing. The only time I've gotten to use the Rep version is actually at Home Gym Con, both in 2022 and 2023. There are also fewer handle customization options for the Rep as well as the Titan version, but I would be curious to see if someone could maybe adapt other handles to those bars if that's something that people are interested in the future. Calling out all you DIY folks, get to work. So how does Bells of Steel set themselves apart? It's kind of what I talked about before, competitive pricing along with the additional handle options. They're also coming out that black chromium look, which looks really good. And they have the rotating sleeves. That's something that nobody else has. What I'll say is that you start to really notice the rotating sleeves more when you're just kind of looking at it through the peripheral vision as you're doing like an SSB, Good Morning, or something to that effect. But you slightly trade off a little bit of camber depth for the spin. The spin is nice. I don't know why they keep going after the spin because I don't think it makes that big of a difference, but it is something that set themselves apart. So I guess I'll embrace it. It's cool. I definitely don't hate it. And this one actually does have the needle bearings that it claims it has, which is great. So Bells of Steel, awesome job between the SS3 and the SS4, incorporating all of those. Now, how do you use your Bells of Steel safety squat bar? Well, you do a whole bunch of stuff. Back squats, front squats, Good Mornings. You can even the front squat thing where you load this thing and pick it up from the front and it's in front of your neck and stuff. You can get really creative. You can also do some upper body movements specifically with this one that you can't do with other versions, such as seal rows, and then you can completely remove the handles and you can do your JM presses. I guess it's this way. Yeah, this way. All sorts of other variations. What I'll say is that if you do any sort of loaded lunge, any sort of walking movements, if you want to do like your GPP and you don't have a frame or a yoke or something, load up a safety squat bar and walk out of the rack and do some walks with it as long as you have the space. Step ups, it's great for step ups. And again, the big thing with that is that you're getting it off of a bar where you're basically trying to hold it in a position on your back, and you're getting into a position where you can just literally go hands-free with the bar, or even hands-wide position, which really destabilizes the core if you want to give yourself a challenge on the other lifts. Big shout out to Brian Allsrew. He's the first person that ever had those programmed for me. When it comes to my use, I've used it on and off. I've compared it directly to the Kabuki transformer bar, and I gotta say that I'm not getting rid of my transformer bar, especially now that Kabuki's probably not a business anymore. At this point, I'm now a weight collector because I have Kabuki plates and such, but that's not what this video is about. We're talking about this. So basically, the SS4 works really well. When it's compared to other safety squat bars, especially the import variety, I find that they're all pretty much the same. They're all pretty close. It's a matter of where do you want to spend your money. Do you want to support Bells of Steel because you already have Bells of Steel products, or do you want to mix it up a little bit because you have a rep rack or a rogue rack and you want something different? Do the rotating sleeves make a difference to you? I really find personally for me, they don't, but for some movements, it could impact how you experience the weight. For instance, with the good morning, as you're doing the good morning and you come down, you do watch those plates slightly spin as you begin and stop those movements. So obviously there is some sort of translation into how it's affecting you in your strength and conditioning journey. One more time, just to wrap it up, I'm gonna have them all linked down below, but basically the Bells of Steel bar comes in at 320 bucks, free shipping. The Rep Fitness is 350 bucks, free shipping, and the Titan is 299, free shipping. So really it's whatever you want. If you have a 43-inch wide rack, so if you have Rogue, if you have surplus strength, I'm totally blanking at some of the other brands, you'll probably want to not get the Titan version because the Titan version doesn't fit comfortably in a rack of that width. That is one of the places that this really shines with the Bells of Steel SS4. But that's been this video on the SS4. At the end of the day, would I recommend it? Absolutely. This is a big change as well from the SS3 because the SS3 couldn't hack it on the channel, but the SS4 is definitely something that's here to stay and something that I would happily recommend to almost every user at home. I appreciate each and every single one of you guys that watch these videos every week. Please, please support the channel. Use the links down below. Nobody ever uses those things, so be the change. Be that person. I appreciate you guys, and I'll see you guys next week.